Terry Cole, welcome to Forward Joy. I've followed you for a few years. I feel like you exist within this little group of therapists that create content online. Vienna Farron, Esther
hmm
Perel, Dr. Alexandra Solomon. You all are like my version of rock stars. Like I don't get very nervous to interview people. I'm a former magazine editor. I've interviewed a lot
hmm
of celebrities, but I was nervous to talk to you today.
Stop.
And I think, I probably found, your work through Vienna, who I've interviewed a few times. And
hmm
I started listening to your podcast in 2023. I was in my first serious relationship as an adult. And, I'm a seeker. I am someone who has
hmm
like an unquenchable thirst for psychology and
mm
especially as it relates to relationships. So your podcast just became like such a light for me
hmm
and I learned so much from it. So I'm really looking forward to getting to know you better today and,
Yay.
hearing about your latest book and all there is to know about Terry Cole.
I'm super duper excited to be here. Yay.
So the first thing I like to ask all my guests is, what were you like as a kid?
In a lot of ways, I was a lot like I am right now, which
Hmm.
is I was really lit up about life, even as a kid.
Yeah.
I never slept in late. I never wanted to go to bed. I was the original FOMO kid where I was like, I don't want to miss anything. So I would wake up at 6 a.m. And even the
Oh
teen
my God.
years where other people like were sleeping in, I was like, there is way too much life to live to sleep in. So never slept in. Not then, not now. Um, I was the youngest of four sisters total. And I was incredibly well loved, to be honest, by everybody. So
Hmm.
my sisters, my mother. I was the fourth cesarean section in the 1960s
Oh,
for my
wow.
mother. And they told her she should abort because they didn't think she would be able to carry it to term because the way they did them back then, they literally like sliced your whole stomach open.
Right.
And she was like, yeah, I'm good. Um, so obviously, and then it was 8:14 when I was born. So I was a big baby.
Oh,
I was the
wow.
only one that my mother breastfed. I was the first person in my immediate family, meaning of my sisters, to go to college, the only one
Mm.
with an advanced degree, the first person to go to Europe. So I did a lot of the firsts in my family system. I got sober when I was 21. I went back and got two of my three sisters to become sober also.
Amazing.
But as a kid, I think I was really just very much of a big empath. I think how I became who I became, like I feel like I've always been this way, but
Yeah.
I have still alive today a really great mother.
Yeah.
And I had a mother who, like at my earliest memories, are my mother bending all the way down. I was probably two, and she's trying to understand, wait, are you saying you like that sweater? Or you don't like that sweater? I was like, I don't like that sweater because it's itchy. She's like, you don't have to wear it. It's okay. The way that she related to me with so
Hmm.
much affection and holding me in such high esteem, not like ridiculousness, just high esteem.
Right.
She just thought I was friggin' great. And she taught me that how I felt mattered and what I thought
Yeah.
mattered at a very young age. And so, as much as I had my problems, as much as anyone else growing up,
Yeah.
I think, have a core belief that what I think matters, and I still think that today. So I feel very grateful in
Yeah.
respect to that. I have the same friends I've had since 1973. So I've had them many
Wow. Very
decades.
impressive. You must be a good
Seriously.
friend.
I am a damn good friend. I love when people say, "Oh, you're so lucky." I'm like, "Bitch, this is not luck. This is intention. This is
Right.
intentional effort."
Yeah, of
And so
course.
I'm really,
Relationships take work.
they sure do, my friend. They sure do. I'm more of a girl's girl. Like I'm a group girl.
Hmm.
And I say girl's girl, I should say a woman's girl. I don't know. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yes, of course.
I love gangs of girls.
I love that. Actually, even hearing you say that your mom cared a lot about, I think you said like how you felt and, your emotional world. I could feel my eyes tearing up a little bit because
Mm,
that I had a bit of the opposite experience
mhm,
where I was I'm also the youngest, the only girl, but I was very very
mm,
sensitive, and I'm absolutely an empath. And
yeah.
I think my parents, who are Caribbean immigrants, I'm the
Mm,
first one to go to college as well. they were very overwhelmed by my feelings and
Mm,
struggled to tolerate it. So that's been
yeah.
a really big journey for me to be okay with my feelings and also to learn how to regulate my own feelings because I
Yeah.
didn't really have anyone to do that with.
Right.
But before we get more into the psychology
Hmm.
stuff, I want to talk about the fact that you didn't start off as a psychologist. You
I
had a
did not.
completely different career in Hollywood.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit
Correct.
about it.
I was a talent agent for supermodels and celebrities, New
So
York and
cool.
LA. So I was bi-coastal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this was, as I was, sort of leaping up the Hollywood, New York ladder, I kept thinking that if I just got that next famous client, if I just made that more money, if I just moved to this agency,
Mm-hmm.
that I would, if I was just the boss, that was my last thing. I thought if I just run the whole thing, then I'm going to feel the way I want to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was running the whole thing. And guess what, Chrissy, if I had to say, I did not feel the way I wanted to
Didn't
feel.
for you. Yeah.
Nope. It wasn't. And I think that because I was on my own therapeutic journey, right? I
Mm-hmm.
got into therapy at 19, stopped drinking at 21.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on this therapeutic journey, and it was like I just became too healthy to stay in the world of entertainment. Like psychologically, I'm not kidding. Like it just was, it's a
No,
dumpster fire.
I believe you. As
I
someone
was like,
who spent their entire career in the fashion industry, I
oh,
totally get what you're talking about.
oh, fashion is the worst. So, and listen, I loved the women that I met.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I left is that I just could no longer deny that I did not care about the movie contract that I was negotiating or the Pantene deal or the money. I only cared about the mental health of my clients. I was
Mm,
getting people into eating disorder clinics, drug treatment clinics, everyone into
mm.
therapy. I was trying to change the industry.
That's
At
right.
my last job was with at Ford down on Green Street in Soho. Ford
Yeah.
modeling agency. I was running the TV department down there. And I remember saying to I kept going into Katie Ford, who was running the agency at the time. And I
Mm-hmm.
would go in and be like, is it possible that we stop calling the models girls because they're women? And she was like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, relax, lady. And then I'd be like, we have these young underage models living in these apartments together, and the
Yeah.
people who are supposed to be chaperoning them are drug addicts. Can we pick different chaperones? She's like, finally, after like the fifth time I went to her office, she was like, do you still want to really be in this business, Tara? And I was like, I really don't. She's like, it's obvious. And that was when I decided to go back to school, get my master's at NYU, and become a
Mm-hmm.
therapist.
Wow. It's hard to be in, I think, the entertainment, fashion, these very creative spaces when you are someone who like really cares about others and
Hmm.
when you have like a certain level of awareness.
Hmm. It's
There's a,
like you can't numb yourself out. I couldn't unsee what I was seeing
mm-hmm,
when it came to how dysfunctional and disordered
mm-hmm,
the relationship and how the models were being treated, because it was even worse then. But before I was into the modeling world, I was working with straight actors for a couple of years before I got into the modeling world, and
mm-hmm,
that was much less unhealthy, if that makes sense, where the objectification
mm-hmm.
for of the women was so bad, and the way that they were treated and the expectation that they would how much money they would give their bookers every Christmas, and that they like there was all of this pressure. I'm like, and if this wasn't a female oriented business where the models are females, there's no way anyone would be doing this crap. Anyway, so I
Right.
was like, I just got to get out of here.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of protection for them.
Hmm.
It's really
No,
hard. So did
no.
you just sort of automatically know that, okay, I want to go into psychology?
Well, my own therapeutic journey changed my life so much
Mm-hmm.
that, and I was still on that ride, and I still am today. But I mean, that was it's 30 years, almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, that I just couldn't believe that I couldn't believe that therapy could change my life or could empower me to change my life more
Mm-hmm.
accurately in a way that was so profound. I used to think before therapy, I thought, here's the thing, you get dealt a hand, like whatever. I'm going to make the best of the hand that I was dealt.
Mm-hmm.
Therapy was like, I was like, look, this hand. I don't like this hand. I don't like this deck. I don't even like this game. I'm there's a whole new game that I'm
Preach.
creating. Yep. Like, I don't need this deck or this, like, I'm not limited to that. And
Mm,
that's what therapy did for me. It made me realize I could just start from where I am and I could just achieve my dreams. I could just decide if you're willing to do the work, which I was always a workhorse,
yeah.
that whatever it is that I want to do, I could do it as long as I didn't drink, right? I stopped drinking
Hmm.
because I was an alcoholic. I mean, there's just no doubt. I believe in the medical model of addiction. I
Hmm.
had no, once I started drinking, I had no ability to stop until I was either blacked out drunk or sleeping, right?
Wow.
Which is scary because you could be
Yeah.
blacked out and you're not sleeping and you're still
Right.
walking around planet Earth doing things
Yep.
that you're going
And
to later
interacting
regret.
with people. Yep.
Yeah, hello. Oh my God, thank God there was no cell phones back then. Holy shit.
And
I could
cameras,
not.
camera phones.
Uh-huh. Thank God. But I feel like those were the two things that sort of shifted for me was having a therapist who was so bold. I was only in college
Hmm.
and she was like, "What you're describing is alcoholism." I was like, "Who?" And she was like, "You." I was like, "No way, man." Then everyone I know is an alcoholic. And she was like, "Maybe, but I don't care because I'm only treating you. And if you don't get help with the 12-step program, I will stop treating you."
Damn.
What's
That's tough.
up, Bev? Woo! I was like, "Can your therapist just fucking break up with you like that?" Who knew? I literally didn't. So I'm so grateful to this day
Mm,
that so then I was 21 years old and like, wow, eyes wide open, right? In life, feeling everything, which was good and bad,
yeah.
but it really tapped into that love of life that we were talking about before, and that
Yeah.
the ambition and the desire to have all these experiences and to travel and to, I mean, I immediately moved into New York City. I was like, just doing my thing in life. And I don't think if I hadn't had that therapist and if I hadn't stopped drinking when I did,
Hmm.
I think I would have eventually stopped. But probably after a decade of bullshit, right? Probably
Right.
after like some not great, some more not great experiences, and clearing it was almost like I had this epiphany when I was deciding to stop drinking, partly because I didn't want her to break up with me, but I was also looking at my life with alcohol. I kind of
Hmm.
knew what that chaos looked like. I was like, being
Hmm.
apologetic for things that you never would have done if you weren't wasted, like all this
Hmm.
stuff that is just a distraction from living life.
Yeah.
It's just a distraction. Or I look to the left and it's like this clean slate. I was like, clean slate. What could I do with a clean slate? I could do anything with a clean slate. So that was sort of my mindset and what therapy did for me.
Hmm.
And then really it was my assistant, someone who had been my assistant at one of my big agencies, called me up and she was like, "Do you want to go to school to become therapists together?" And I was like, "Yes." She was like, "Let's apply." So we looked and I was like, "The only place I want to go is NYU," which I had some nerve seeing as I went to a shitty undergraduate school and I hadn't been in school in almost 10 years. I'm like, why would they accept me? No idea. But I'm also not going to Omaha because I've been living in Manhattan for years. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not moving out of New York. So either
Right.
do it here or don't do it. And I was like, but I'm also not just doing it here. The only program I wanted to go to was the one at NYU because it was very clinically based.
Hmm.
And then when I got in, I was like, oh my God, I have to go. Now I have to go. Like I actually got into NYU and I did.
Wow. Did any of your clients, like models, ever become one of your patients?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Here's a story quickly.
Yeah.
So yes, I had lots of as long as they weren't a client for a long time, people would come back to me later. But I had every one of my, I had this niche market
Mm,
for models and actors and producers and songwriters and the entertainment business. These
right.
were all my clients, which was actually
Oh,
great.
yeah.
So interesting. But when I was at my internship, I was at a fancy ass drug treatment clinic in Midtown. And
Hmm.
it was this guy who, his name is Dr. Arnold Washington. And this was, you know, when he had a book called Willpower is Not Enough about coke addiction, because this was the 90s, people. Everyone was doing blow. So
Yeah.
um, I was sitting at the front desk in my internship. Keep in mind, it's funny. I was literally running a talent agency by day And then the next day, I would, I had my own hours at the talent agency. I was literally
Hmm.
going into this internship and I'm sitting at the front desk and it's one of those double windows. And the
Hmm.
chick sitting next to me is the, this girl with a huge tattoo of her kid on her back. Anyway, she was great. She was there. I would sit, she was the receptionist. And in walks one of my most famous clients walking into the drug treatment clinic for heroin addiction. She doesn't know I'm interning at a drug
Right.
treatment clinic. So I literally just slip off my chair and fall onto the ground
I was about
underneath
to
the
say, did you
desk.
hide?
Oh, I did. Oh, I did. And of course, this one next to me is like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Shut up and help her, please." Um, she helped her. And that was when I was like, "You guys, you have to have a separate entrance for visible people. You can't send a super famous supermodel into the front door of a drug treatment clinic. You can't. And it's hard in
Right.
New York. It's easier to do that in LA because
Yeah.
in New York you have some limitation, but they actually figured it out. So they were able to have a separate entrance. I was like, because who knows how many other people I might know who walk in your door, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I really love though that you were able to kind of blend your two worlds together.
That was more like crashing of two worlds at that moment. But yes,
In that moment,
afterwards,
yes.
afterwards, what's interesting is that I had this niche market.
Yeah.
Like I was uniquely skilled and still am. And I do, but just on a much higher level now,
Hmm.
help people with fame.
Yeah.
Because fame is a whole trip unto itself. Like, how do you not drink your own Kool-Aid? How do you not
Hmm.
surround yourself with bottom feeders? How do you
Right.
not get killed by social media? Because it's such a nightmare to be out
Hmm.
there and the number of trolls and people and energy. How do you
Yeah,
protect your energy when you're famous, you know? Anyway,
absolutely. So let's talk about you released your second book in the fall of last year, Too
yeah,
Much, a guide to breaking the cycle of high functioning codependency. What inspired you to write this?
my clients and my own experience. So my therapy practice was super highly capable women, right?
Hmm.
That's really where I landed, besides
Hmm.
having people who are highly visible, which I've done as well. But they were like the masters of the universe, were my clients, are my clients. And if I would say to them, hey, what you're describing in that relationship, that's a codependent pattern. The moment I would mention codependency, they'd be like, no, incorrect. You are not, no, you are wrong because I make all the money. I make all the moves. Everyone depends on me. I'm the rock in my family system. I'm not dependent on squat, Terry. So there's no way that I am codependent. And I was like, oh, my clients don't know what codependency is. Okay. So we're going to start there. And then I started really looking at the difference, right? Most people were, my clients were being unduly influenced by Codependent No More, which is the seminal text written by Melody Beattie, who just passed, rest
Hmm.
in peace. But in their minds, they were like, I'm not enabling an alcoholic,
Right.
so I cannot be a codependent. And I was like, codependent, listen, I want you to think of this book and high functioning codependency as a codependency recovery plan for the modern woman,
Hmm.
right? This is how we live now. So when I went back to my clients and said, what I'm seeing is you're a high functioning codependent, they're like, oh, yeah, I am exhausted. I am doing all the things for all the people.
Hmm.
And I am high functioning because this is the part that they was a disconnect, is they thought being codependent was like being meek and weak and sitting at home waiting for your alcoholic boyfriend to bring home the grocery money, but instead he spent it at the track. You know what I mean?
Right. I know. It's
Yeah.
so interesting how codependency has, yeah, become sort of like synonymous with enabling people who have substance abuse issues.
Yes.
But what is your like official definition of high
Yes.
functioning codependency?
It is you, my friend, being overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, circumstances, relationships, finances, situations of the people in your life to the detriment of your own internal peace. Maybe to the detriment of your financial well being, your mental well being, psychological
Mhm.
well being, emotional well being. So, what does that mean? That means your friend calls you up and she's in a crisis, your best friend. How quickly does that crisis, her crisis, become your crisis? I'm not saying how quickly are you like, I'm concerned about my friend. How can I help? Not
Yeah.
that. When you're a high functioning codependent, you are literally feeling overly responsible for fixing other people's problems. So your friend
Mm.
has a problem. You're not just like, oh, babe, I know you'll figure it out. You're like, I know the best oncologist in New York City at Sloan. I have his text number. I'm giving it to you right now. I have these books. You should do it. I know these people. We're problem solving endlessly,
Mm-hmm.
but in a different way. So how you can tell if you're wondering, and don't worry, we'll talk more about how you can tell,
Yeah.
but is like check your
Not my system.
urgency. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I no doubt it is, my friend. But check your urgency, right, around other people's problems. If we look at what are the traits of being a high functioning codependent, first and foremost is feeling responsible for fixing other people's problems.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody? Anyone? Um, Maybe a little.
A little
Uh,
bit.
o- Being overly giving, right? Giving till it hurts, doing things a lot of times that people haven't even asked you to do. Maybe feeling exhausted, resentful, a little bitter, feeling underappreciated in your relationships. Auto advice giving, as we said, we can't stop fixing.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't even have to ask because I'm going to tell you anyway. Being
Right.
overly self sacrificing, um, auto accommodating. So, this is interesting. This is when we're out in the wild, how we relate to our circumstances, what's happening out here where I tell a story in the book that I was in the city at a really busy salon, which I never go to on Saturdays because it's a zoo, but I had to
Yeah.
go on this Saturday because I was doing something. And they put a mask on my hair, and I was laying in the sink with the mask on for 20 minutes, but I'm not doing anything. And now suddenly there starts to be a backup for the sink. And every new person who's standing online with their little robe on, I'm becoming more and more anxious that I'm taking up a sink that someone could be using. And I'm like, I should move. Why are they letting me sit here? I feel like an idiot. I should call the assistant over. I call the assistant over. I'm like, hey, I can move. She's like, yeah, hello, we got it, lady. We do this every Saturday, Terry. I was like, all right, whatever. And then I realized in that moment
Mm.
that, first of all, I've been in therapy for so many years. And the fact that I'm still doing that, I'm positive I'm not alone. I know there's other people who are
Mm-hmm.
also doing that.
Yeah.
So I just did a quick vlog about it and it went viral. People were like losing their shit, being like, "Oh my God, I'm auto accommodating everywhere in the world. I can't be online at a grocery store in the 12 or less line, and if someone behind me has one thing, I just wave them ahead. If someone behind me has four things, I wave them ahead." Like being so dialed into, if I'm on a plane and people want to sit near each other, I'm always overhearing so I can be like, I'll move. I can move. I don't mind moving. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
I'm never
Uh-huh.
moving. But I love that for you.
Enjoy. I'm only moving if my seat is better if I move for you.
Truly.
But anyway,
Yeah.
this auto accommodating is we see a need, and even if it's not our side of the street, we
Mm-hmm.
feel compelled to be a part of the solution. And then two other things I want to say about this, and then we could break them down. Anticipatory planning is
Mm-hmm.
another HFC, high functioning codependent move, where
Mm-hmm.
maybe you know you're going to be with someone difficult. I had these two uncles who didn't get along years ago. So I would have my family over for Christmas, and I would be like, so Uncle Jimmy drinks this kind of booze. Uncle Bobby drinks this kind of booze. I'm going to make sure I have the booze they like. Make sure they don't
Mm-hmm.
sit near each other. I'm going to assign my one sister to handle Uncle Jimmy, my other sister to handle Uncle Bobby. Like, I was literally puppet mastering, and I'm not the only one who's done this,
Right.
rather than just
Orchestrating.
exactly orchestrating, rather than being like, if you two grown-ups can't be grown-ups, fucking don't come to Christmas. Like,
Right.
this is, you know what I mean? But
Yep.
instead, I
You
was
made it your
going
problem.
correct. And I wanted to control it because listen, let's just talk about at the base of any kind of codependency, garden variety, high functioning,
Mm-hmm.
is an overt or covert bid or attempt to control other people's outcomes.
Mm.
So we really got to think about what that is. Other people's outcomes. So it's like part of getting into recovery, which is the way that I talk about it, because there's no
Yeah.
getting cured from this shit. We can get into
Right.
recovery though, is learning to let the chips fall where they may when they're not your mother effing chips.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're an HFC, we kind of feel like all the chips are our mother effing chips. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because we
Mm-hmm.
want to control everything. So yeah, questions, thoughts?
What do you say to the people who are like, I'm just a caring person?
Yeah. Oh, I get the trust me on the interwebs. Lots of people are like, Terry, maybe I'm just nice. Ever think of that? I'm
Right.
like, yeah, I've been a therapist for 30 years. I never thought of that. Here's the thing. I have thought of that. And what I want to say to that is if you can't not do it, it is not you being nice. It is a compulsion.
Mm,
So
I
that's
hear
it.
that.
You may
Yeah.
choose. You may choose to still do it, but also let's talk about what is the cost to doing it. To other people, you're trampling on their sovereignty. When you're just auto advice giving your ass off to people, telling them what you think they should do,
Hmm.
you are blocking intimacy
Yeah.
because you're not asking them, you're not giving space for them to just tell you the problem. You know, Chris, my 2 cents on like the biggest flex when it really comes to real love, it's not about fixing other people's problems. It's about can you be in the foxhole with someone you love during a dark night of their soul and not treat them like a problem for you to fix to make yourself more comfortable because that's what we're doing. Can you hang with
Yeah.
the messy emotions when someone doesn't know what the hell to do? When someone is brokenhearted? Nobody wants platitudes. Nobody wants to feel managed, which is what
Right.
we're doing when we're like, could be worse. Better to know now.
Right.
God doesn't give you more than you can handle. Everything happens for a reason. Oh my God, shut up. Stop saying those things. Nobody likes that. It is so mean.
I
That's
know.
about you. That's to make you feel better. So, my point when people say, I'm just
Hmm.
being nice, I'm like, I would like to invite you to re examine what your motivation is. And here's the thing I'm saying what I'm saying in a kind of in a tongue in cheek, funny way, but I'm sincerely not judging because I was the worst offender who ever lived. I originated the
Hmm.
concept because of who I
Right.
was. They say you teach what you most need to learn. So
Yep.
again, there is no judgment, no shade coming from me to anybody because I was the worst. And we can only get into recovery because it'll still be for me it is still my nature, my natural instinct. I
Hmm.
still want to tell people what to do,
Right.
but I just don't. The same way that being in recovery from alcohol, do I wish I had this was filled with wine right now? Maybe, but I choose to not do that so I can still have my life,
Yeah.
right? But the thought or the desire, when you get into recovery from being a HFC, a high functioning codependent, you create enough space to choose differently in your relationships. Because part of the cost to you is exhaustion, is being burnt out, is having an autoimmune disorder, is feeling underappreciated, feeling
Hmm.
less joy, feeling put upon, kind of bitter in life. This is what happens if we continue to overfunction the way we do as high functioning codependents.
Hmm.
That's like a one-way ticket to Bitterland. There's like no other stops on that train. Sooner or later, you end up being a martyr. And no, but trust me, all the martyrs in their 60s and 70s, when they were 25, they weren't like, can't wait to grow up and be a martyr. Got to be amazing. Nobody wants to do that. But if we don't tell the truth about how we feel, what we
Hmm.
want, who we are, we don't prioritize our own preferences, needs, desires, deal breakers, then we end up bitter because we feel
Right.
like other people are taking advantage of us, even though really we're serving ourselves up on a silver platter.
I'm curious about how much this is possibly passed down because, when I first listened to the podcast you did about this, I think around the time that the book was launching, maybe you read
Hmm.
an excerpt or
Yeah.
something. I
Yep.
remember I was on a plane to Menorca and I was like, oh my God, it gave me the most like profound breakthrough because I was like, this is my mother. My mother is a martyr.
Yep.
And my mother, but also my mother is a nurse. And so
Mm.
it's just, I'm sure, like, kind of similar to being a therapist, that you feel like that's kind of just hardwired into you. Like, that's your mission in life is to help people and to do things for them and to caretake them. But it has really impacted our relationship because she's always over functioning for me and
Yep.
so and did my entire childhood, so then I was under functioning. But now that
Yes.
I'm an adult, and actually since the pandemic I moved back home with my parents,
Mm.
so of course slipping back into that dynamic where I'm always under functioning according to her because she
Mhm.
needs things to happen on her
Hmm.
time. So
Yeah.
um, it's just this very vicious cycle.
But let's talk about, you bring up this really great point because I have a lot of nurses in my crew. Like anyone in any kind of healing, helping art, anyone in
Hmm.
the medical field, because there is a lot of selflessness that goes
Hmm.
along with that. But what happens is when you don't know how to turn it off, it's one
Hmm.
thing to be anticipating all the needs at work when you're a nurse. That makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's literally your actual job. So, what I help people do when they get into recovery from being a high functioning codependent is realize that at home, that's not your job. And in your personal relationships, your mother being that way blocks the intimacy in your relationship with her.
Big time. Big
And
time.
this is exactly what it's like anyone. So if you have, I had a friend who I was helping with a relationship thing just literally a week ago. And she was talking about she and her girlfriend and how after spending a week with me, we were away at this conference and we just really got into like her high functioning ways.
Hmm.
And I was her and the codependency and all this stuff. And she and her girlfriend were on a break anyway. They got back together and she was like, it was the most profound experience I've ever had in my entire life. That when she started, her partner started talking about her feelings, she was like, I was aware of my desire to jump in and fix and say it wasn't that bad and all the things I would normally do, but I didn't do it. And the the depth of the conversation and the intimacy that we both were bawling our eyes out, but she was like, I cannot believe I feel so sad for how long I've been cutting off that deeper intimacy between us.
Hmm.
And that's another thing that we people really do experience when they get into recovery from being a HFC. There's a lot of mourning that we have to do for how long we were the way we were. And we have to give ourselves grace to the best of our ability.
Right.
But it's okay to be sad that you wish you knew this sooner. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah, that's such a interesting point because I think, and I can recognize in myself, and it's something that I've definitely been trying to work on of how much I want to insert my own advice when friends talk to me and like, yes, I'm the person that
Me
a
too.
lot of people come to for advice.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I think a lot of times, yes, someone just needs a sounding board. And so
Right.
when you're so quick to jump in with advice, you kind of shut things down for that other person. And I can
Yeah, you
understand
do.
how you sort of like take their agency away.
That's exactly right. That's a perfect way of saying it, Chrissy. It's we are literally trampling on their sovereignty, even if it's inadvertent. One
Hmm.
of the big stories that I tell in the book is about one of my sisters who was in a really bad situation romantically. So
Hmm.
she always had bad boyfriends, but this guy was really bad. So he was like doing drugs. He was physically abusive to her. She was actively alcoholic. They were living in a shack in upstate New York in the winter with
Hmm.
no running water and no electricity.
Oh
Okay.
God.
So I don't need to embellish that story because it's a fucking nightmare. And
Right.
as an HFC, someone who's like a problem fixer, right?
Hmm.
I could barely focus on anything else in my life. This was many, many years ago. So I finally go into my therapist like third week in a row. I'm like, what am I going to do? I've done everything. Bev, what am I going to do about Jenna? Like, how am I going to get her out of there? And then she just said to my face, Terry, let me ask you something. What makes you think you know what your sister needs to learn and how she needs to learn it in this lifetime? And I was like, well, I think we can both agree she doesn't need to do it with this piece of shit in the middle of the woods without running water. And she said, I cannot agree though, Tara, because you know what? I'm not God. I don't know what your sister needs to learn, but you need some boundaries. You don't need to talk to her about this guy every 2 days. You can still be her person. So anyway, I have a conversation with my sister. I say, I love you, and I cannot talk about this is so distressing. I cannot talk about it with you. But if you
Hmm.
ever want to get out, I'm your person. I'll always be your person. Less than 9 months later, she called. Are you still my person? I was like, getting in my car, went and picked her up. She got into recovery. She went back to school. She never was in another abusive relationship. This was like 3 decades ago. And the important
Oh
thing,
my God. So
I know,
incredible.
crying. Oh my God, it was so hard though to do. By the way,
I'm
to step
sure.
back was just hell for an. I was such a codependent at that point. But what happened is instead of her baby sister being the putting on her cape and being the
Hmm.
hero of the bigger sister story. My sister got to be the hero of her own story, and she got all the good stuff that comes with that, like the self-esteem and the ability to count on herself and to feel good about herself instead of, you know, how much shame she'd feel if I got her out of that situation, but it was me, the money, the thing,
Hmm.
instead, she did it for herself. And that was where I really saw this is what love is. Love is not fixing it. That's compulsion. That's me wanting not being able to deal with my hard feelings about her
Hmm.
being in a terrible situation.
Right.
But that's not love. That's control. That is control. And that was a bitter pill to swallow. But once I really got it, I was able to start breathing deeply and stepping back in all of my relationships more and being like,
Hmm.
this is not my side of the street. I do not have to be sweating these details. I am not in control of this. This is you. And so instead of auto advice giving, what can people do instead if they find themselves being identified with what we're talking about? You can say to your friend, how can I best support you right now?
Hmm.
You can say, that sucks. That sounds so hard. I'm so sorry you're going through that shit. You don't know what other people should be doing. And when we auto fix, you've got to remember, you guys, we're doing it for us. And another thing I want you to think about, if you feel identified with kind of doing all the things for all the people, but then kind of being a little bitter about it,
Hmm.
is before you agree to anything else in 2025, you're going to ask yourself these two questions. Do I have the bandwidth to do this thing without becoming resentful?
Hmm.
Number two, do I even friggin' want to do it? Because so much of the time, as high functioning codependents, if someone else wants you to do it, we almost feel like we should do it. We should want to do it. Like, so
Right.
my friend wants me to do it. We, so much of the time, we don't even step back to go, do I want to do that thing? Is that my thing? Whether it's whatever someone's asking you to do. Because a lot of times when I was younger, people would be asking me to do things like, I didn't like doing that thing. I like that friend. I just
Right.
don't like outside concerts with like bugs and sun. Like I don't people singing to
Same.
James Taylor. Like I don't want to go to that thing. And why should my friend be offended? What did she invent outdoor concerts? She did not. So the
Right.
more honest you become, and it's a really valid question. Do I even want to do this? And listen, being in a civilized society, obviously, we're going to do crap we don't want to do. We have families,
Right.
we have
All the time.
parents, we have
Yeah.
siblings, we have people, we have nieces and nephews, we have kids, grandkids. I have, like, sure, we're going to be doing stuff, but I want you to be doing it mindfully, not automatically and not resentfully. Really think about are you just a high level people pleaser?
Mm.
Right? Even though you look real successful. So a lot of times people don't identify with it. But when I think about it, that's definitely what I was. Nobody would
Right.
have pegged me as a codependent or a people pleaser, but I was both because I didn't like anyone being upset. I didn't
Yeah.
want there to be any conflict. I didn't want there to be any problems. I just wanted peace, but not saying something that I needed to say to keep the peace, as Cheryl Richardson would say, creates a war within yourself.
Mm. That's powerful. Lately, I've thought a lot about how, like, we are all on this earth to, like, learn the lessons that are necessary for our personal growth.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
also like, who are you to insert yourself in someone else's journey or to let
Do.
anyone else insert themselves in your journey?
Yeah.
Because this is my mission and that's their
Correct.
mission. And
Yes.
we've all gotta, like, of course, we're gonna need to lean on one another, but at the end of the day, it's like we we have to know that we can do it on our own.
Absolutely. And boundaries play such a huge role in this. I want to give you a link if you I would love for you to go
Yes.
take this boundary quiz if you
Oh,
haven't taken
yes, I
it.
will. I have
It's
not.
it's boundaryquiz.com,
Hmm.
totally free. And there's 7 archetypes. And it's really helpful because you could be like the peacekeeper or you could be the ice princess. Like there's all different archetypes of
Hmm.
how we relate to boundaries,
Hmm.
mostly in a disordered way. That once you get a little insight, you can see, oh, I do that to protect
Hmm.
myself. And maybe I'd like to change that. I just figured it's
Right.
kind of a fun thing for people to do.
Absolutely. Two more things.
Okay.
I would love to hear more about your 9 month, is it a
It's
workshop-ish?
actually a mastermind.
Oh, so tell us about it.
Oh, it's so exciting. So we're starting in March. So we're starting this month. Um, it's a very small group of women, for women only, for helpers, healers, entrepreneurs, business people, brick and mortar. I have a lot of real estate people, therapists. Like there's just a whole mix, a group of women. A lot. It's professional women,
Mhm.
sometimes women leaving the corporate world, wanting to, do something different, pivoting. So it's basically a very intimate, sacred container. We spend 9 months together. We meet weekly, we meet monthly. You meet 3 times solo with me, which is basically the only way for people to work with me privately now is
Mhm.
through the mastermind. I only take 10 people. So it's a very teeny group of people. You can check it out at terricole.com/flourish.
Mhm.
Um, it's a 9 month container. We meet twice for 3 days during that container. So we're probably going to do, I think, California and New York, where the whole group gets together and we
Oh,
really do
cool.
a deep dive. It's so much fun. And I have a bunch of testimonial reels, I think, on that page where you can see what people get out of it because so much of the time, women who join my mastermind are really ambitious and they almost feel like they're too ambitious for their friends. Like they almost feel ashamed of
Mhm.
what they want. They have these huge dreams. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this is what this mastermind is for. And what's unique about this is that you have everything right on one side, which is all the entrepreneurial things. What have I done? I've built an empire in my career. I let's say you want to write a book. I By being in the mastermind, I give you my book proposal that was $1 million book proposal for a 3 book deal for my first time out. How to have a podcast. Right. I've had my podcast for 10 years, regularly, almost always in the top 20 or 25 of all of mental health on iTunes. My YouTube channel. How do you do brand partnerships? How do you get better social media? How do you run teams? How do you get more visibility? How do you do more television? All of that stuff is one side. But then what makes my mastermind unique is that if you move to this side, there's all the psychological aspect because I've been a therapist for 3 decades. And I know that if you have limiting beliefs or you have childhood wounds, you have things that are getting in the way of you pulling your chair up to the table. We have to get to that at the same time that I teach you all these other things. And each person is very individual, of course. Wherever you are, you're in the exact right place. Like we tailor it
Mhm.
to where the participants are. And it's me and Team TC. So it's not just me. It's the
Right.
strategist who actually runs my company,
Got it.
then works on your, like, would literally look at your website and be like, here's the diagnosis of the website. This is what I
Mhm.
think needs to change, or the messaging, or whatever. But it's also just so fun to be in a safer and safe container with women for 9 months, where most of us are focusing on other people most of the time. And
Right.
what could happen in your life if you spent 9 months focusing on you and your dreams and your fears and your limitations and breaking through those limitations? I feel like the sky's the limit, you know? So, yeah,
Absolutely. Is this something you're doing every year?
we do it every year, but I also have a community. I have an amazing community that people can join at any time,
Okay,
which
great.
is terricole.com/TCM, Terry Cole membership, where you get 4 of my signature courses by just joining the membership, which is just 59 bucks a month. I meet every week with that membership where it's live Q&A. So you bring your questions. I've got answers. It is a very cozy, loving community, and it's women. It's just for women, but it's amazing. So I love that community, and people can join at any point. And really, it's not expensive at all for what you actually get.
Right. That's so brilliant, and I'm going to look into that myself.
Please come.
Last question. What's bringing you joy right now?
Oh, my pit bull puppy.
Oh.
Her name is Charlie. She just got spayed. Which though that's been hell, but I haven't had a dog in a long time because of how much I've traveled.
Right.
And my husband, she's a pit bull mix, but the amount of joy that her happy heart and her smiling face brings to both my husband and myself. It's funny. Give empty nesters a dog. Dude, my husband was like, no clothing on the dog. I was like, okay. Then I found an article that's like upstate New York and pit bulls, they don't have a lot of fat. They're probably cold. I sent it to my husband. He came home with a jacket and two sweaters. I was like, I thought no clothing. He's like, well, I don't want her to be cold.
That that's so funny. My parents have a cat named Charlie, and I picked him out right when I was moving out of my parents' house to go live in New York City. So I was like, I'm leaving. I'm the last one to go. So now you guys have a cat to take care of.
I love
We
it.
love
So
him.
sweet.
Terry, thank you so much for being here today. I can't I'm like halfway through the book, and also I left a copy out near where my mom likes to hang out in our house, just hoping that she might pick it up and, get curious. So
I love
fingers
it.
crossed. Fingers crossed.
I'm crossing my fingers.
But
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.